Hello and welcome to the Charles Cook Podcast. The focus of this podcast is local and state issues here in the state of Tennessee. You can follow my podcast on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, TuneIn, and Alexa. Just search for the Charles Cook Podcast. You can also subscribe or follow on any of those platforms and you'll be notified when I post new content. The best place to find all of those links is on my podcast webpage at charlescookpodcast.buzzsprout.com. And you can email me at charlescookpodcast@gmail.com. Today, my guest is State Representative Elaine Davis. She's from Knox County, District 18. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So she's from District 18, freshman this year, newly elected, and she's done some good things in Nashville this year and got some good things accomplished. And I wanted to have her on to talk about a few of those bills that's going to have some impact here locally. So Elaine, welcome. And if you got anything else you want to introduce or talk about before we get to talk about your bills, go ahead.
No, I'm just glad that you had me on. I appreciate it, Charles.
Yeah, you're welcome. Glad to do it and glad to have you on. So when I first met you, I come to Knoxville. You had a bill that I had talked to you about already on the phone that day, and you were going to be speaking at the Americans for Prosperity, AFP, meeting in Knoxville that night. I believe that was on February the 2nd. That was on a Thursday, and I drove to Knoxville to hear you and Brian Ritchie speak at that meeting. And the bill that that I was really interested in was House Bill 448, and that was on speaking at local government meetings. And the reason why that intrigued me was because I knew that we'd been going through some stuff here in Morristown and Hamlin County, and I've seen some issues in Jefferson County and stuff. So I wanted to talk to you about that and hear what you had to say. So tell us how that bill came about.
Well, it's interesting to bring that up because the way that kind of that bill process works is that you reach out to legal services and you speak with them about your idea and the bill that you're interested in presenting, and then they draft that language for you. So in talking to someone from legal services, we were talking about different issues, and it kind of came up. I was talking about something else, but the conversation came around to, during COVID, and a lot of parents and were coming forward during school board meetings and trying to really bring their issues to redress their government. And I had noticed that, that some of those parents weren't allowed to speak across the country. And that was surprising to me. And when I was talking to legal services about that, they said, well, we don't have that codified in law here in Tennessee, which surprised me because I've served on county commission and, obviously we have public forum. And when I was on the ethics committee, that was included in there. So we have it in practice in a lot of places, but it wasn't codified in TCA. And so I thought that was important to make sure that was in statute, because we want to ensure that everybody has the ability to redress their government. That's a First Amendment right, and it needs to be protected. And so that was something that I felt was an easy lift. But unfortunately, there were some definite groups that were not in favor of actually getting that codified. So I was grateful to see that we got that over the finish line.
Yeah, and as I was saying, here in Morristown, we ended up, the city council actually moved the non-agenda items to a work session before that. And so they can say what they want to, they actually moved the non-agenda items out of the city council meeting and moved it to a work session where, there's no quorum required. No one has to really be there for that, the council members, but they have to be there to have a quorum for the city council meeting. And so if you have an issue here, you have to show up early, 30 minutes to an hour early to be able to air your grievances. So, it may be somebody flooding your property or something, your road caving in or something, any kind of issues like that. And you want to go speak on it. If it's not on the agenda, that's what it's come to. And then the county was looking to do some things, but I'll give the county government credit. Not everybody's happy with it. Not everybody's going to be happy with it, but with what they do. But I think they made some decent changes and done all right with theirs. But what the city of Morristown did was, kind of shady. And
well, the way that the law is written, it's written so that it does have to be we wrote it kind of in general terms to allow for specificity either in practice or elsewhere in law. So if there are some groups that have more specific ways for public forum, we wrote it to where it has to be, the council or governing body can determine the number of speakers, and because you don't want to have 50 people all talking about one issue, because then not everybody has an opportunity you could be there for quite some time on one specific issue. So a lot of times if there is something that is important to a group of people, you can try to have like a spokesperson. And then we wanted to make sure that you did have time, they could determine the amount of time you got to speak. We want to make sure it's reasonable in that you don't get 30 seconds, but not spend 10 minutes on one person, because then you don't have an opportunity for a lot of folks to have their voice heard. And then also it needs to be germane to the agenda, because you don't want to have somebody that wants to come and talk about the Illuminati or or something that's not relevant or in the purview of either that governing body. So we did want to make sure that people were on point, on topic, and that governing body had the ability to kind of create some constraints, because we definitely want to make sure that the business of doing the business of government moves forward. And so, but when you talk about things with regard to zoning and or any sort of issues like you were speaking about, Charles, that is important, and that is part of your responsibility as a governing body to hear those issues from your citizens. And if there's something where there is flooding issues, that is important. That's part of your responsibility. And that, I think that whether that's an agenda item not specifically listed on the agenda or not, you still should be able to be respectful of your community and your citizens and hear those issues. That's what you're elected to do.
exactly. And, I get it. I've been to some of the meetings and I've seen some of the things that go on. But, in the end, at the end of the day, these people run for those seats and they ask for it. And, they're not going to be happy with everything that's said there. And so I thought it was wrong for them to do what they did. And so, I voiced my opinion about it. And that's why I was interested in the bill that you had there. It was House Bill 448. But when I was there that night, you talked about some other bills that you had filed, and you spoke about House Bill 817, and that one really, as you know, I spoke up there and I said that's huge, and so it was for me, from my perspective here in Morristown. I know there was other areas like Knoxville, and but a lot of people think, well, it only affected Knoxville, but it was on the municipality elections and how they were run. And here in Morristown, as of right now, and we have an election going on right now, it doesn't matter if you live in the city or in which ward, everybody is running like a at-large seat. And even if you run for Ward 3 seat and you have to live in Ward 3 to run for it, everyone in the city gets to vote for it. And I've studied the elections here for a while, and I know how they work. And so it was a big bill. So I will let you explain how that bill came about.
Well, prior to me being elected as state representative, I served on the Knox County GOP as the vice chair. And one of the things that we kind of ran on when I was running for vice chair, myself and Daniel Herrera, who became chair, was that we felt like that it was very important for the Knox County Party to get involved in city elections. The Knoxville city elections are nonpartisan, and they had more and more become. We had declared Democratic Socialists who were representing us in the city of Knoxville, and so we felt like that we needed to have more conservative voices on that city council. They just recently raised property taxes 40%. And so a lot of the policies and the way things were going in the city, we felt like didn't represent a lot of the conservatives that lived in Knoxville City. So we got involved in that race. One of the things that, so I don't live in the city. I'm a county girl. So I didn't know how specifically how those city elections were run. And the way that in the Knoxville City, in the primary, the district votes on those district representatives. But in that general election, they call it a regular election, the entire city then votes on those district representatives. So it's very similar to what you were saying in that they become kind of an at-large candidate. And I felt like that was voter disenfranchisement. Here you have someone who has to qualify in the district, and then people outside of their district are then determining who their voice is and who their representative is. And so that to me I felt like was wrong. And so when we did some research on the law and the legislation, there were some exceptions that were written into the law. And so that's what the bill did. It removed those exceptions and brought it back to the general law, that statewide law that said that if you qualify for a district, the voters that live in that district are the ones that vote for you in the primary and in the general. And so I just felt like that's the majority of how the rest of the state does it. That's how that's how Knox County does it. That's how our school boards are done. And so I just felt like that it really truly was voter disenfranchisement when you have the rest of the city then determining who your city representative is. And that's why I think we're ultimately successful. I believe that the rest of the legislature understood that it was voter disenfranchisement. And so we were passing that.
I think it's the core of representative government. If you're gonna run in that ward, that's what we call it in the Morristown city elections, wards or districts. Sorry, I'm dealing with some allergies. Wards or district, if you have to live there to run for that, but you know that your votes are coming from a different place that actually elects you, where are you going to focus at? You're going to focus. Exactly. People are going to focus there and forget about where they actually live and who they're actually supposed to represent. And so that's why I said, okay, this is huge. But as I've told you before, and even that night, and I come to Nashville and we worked on some bills, and I talked to some folks even on this bill and sent some emails and stuff, and got to tell people my story and how it worked against me. So when I ran for city council here in Morristown in 2021, and I lost that election by 38 votes, but I won my ward. But I knew going into that election, as I studied these elections and stuff, how it would work. And so I'm going to try to play this video of the question was at the city council forum. The question was, if you could change one aspect of city government, what would it be? And my answer was how these council races are.
I want to check how the board. If they're running one Ward 2, that's where they're running at. And we don't let the voters in West Tennessee elect our state representatives, state senators in East Tennessee. So why would we let the voters in Ward 1 or Ward 2 elect the ones in 3 or 4? That's not the way the county government does it, or county commission. I understand the citywide for the mayor's race and the 2 at large, but the people living in Ward 3, 4, these should be the ones that elected in city council at the time. You're making the focus more on your own ward instead of focusing on the group that might get you elected in a part of the population.
Okay, so I addressed that there, and so it was well known. And you know, as I found out later, I heard the city mayor had some issues with this bill, and kind of put some pressure on some folks, but and complained about it. But it's not like he didn't know about it. So I also want to show you, because he was at that forum and he actually quoted me on his Facebook page, and I want to share that with you. So if you can see this, if some of y'all that may be watching listening on audio only, Morristown Mayor Gary Chesney quotes me. It says, "Cook, stop running citywide. Have people get to vote only for the councilman in their ward." And that's, so he knew it then. 2 years ago, they knew it was going on. They know how these elections are going, and that's why they pushed back so hard, because they didn't want their little golden bundle there that they had, how they get their votes, to stop. Now, as far as the mayor's race and at-large races, it's still going to be the same way. But for the 4 wards in the city, it's going to change it. That's a huge change, and it's going to make these candidates and these people on the city council have to focus more on what's going on in their ward or their district. And I think it's huge, and I thank you for running this bill.
Well, what's important about the bill, Charles, is that it allows for somebody who is kind of well known in that community to be able to represent that community. My concern was too is that a lot of times you have somebody that's kind of that grassroots candidate that then has to run citywide, and especially here in Knoxville, if you look at some of past mayoral races, it's $1 million campaign, right. And so you have to then, as a candidate, very quickly go from the primary to the general election within a few months to completely reach a huge number of people and voters. And so that inability to get your message out really chills a lot of grassroots candidates from representing their district. And in my opinion, that really can help to then control who does get elected. And the problem with that is that you might have somebody that could really bring a strong voice for a neighborhood or for a community onto council or onto commission that really could then bring a huge amount of knowledge to your decision-making process. And that's the whole having representative government, is having somebody that represents the community to carry that voice forward and to really, just echo what's going on in the community. And you, as another legislator, as a fellow legislator, you're turning and looking to that person, to that representative from that area, to be the expert on that area. Well, if it's not somebody that has the connections or the name ID to then win citywide, a lot of times they don't live in that area, or they're not well known in that area. They're a different, candidate. So I just feel like it kind of levels the playing field for a lot of those people that really truly have a heart to serve and live in the community. And I think it's important to make sure that we elect people that do represent the community and the area. And it is, the choice of the voters in that district or that ward, just like you said, because that had happened. Those examples had happened where in the primary, the district had voted on somebody, the top vote getter, then didn't go on and win to be council person. And so it's just like you said, what happened to you, even though you had won your ward, you didn't ultimately win. And that's unfortunate because that's who your ward chose, was you. They were your selection to be the voice for your community. So hopefully, you'll run again and things will be different.
Well, that remains to be seen. Had an opportunity to run this year, and I had a lot of things going on and that I had already committed to, and like the men's Bible study at our church, and I wasn't going to give that up to run. And I felt, I just felt like that's where God wanted me to do. But you know what? What I wanted, one of the biggest things that I wanted to see change happened, and I didn't even have to run, on video. The
There
mayor
you go.
put me on it. And as I told my pastor, God sure works in mysterious ways. And
Yes, he does.
and you helped that happen. And and so that, as I told you that night, it's huge. That was a huge bill, and we were able to get it through, and you guys got it over the hump. And I think it's going to make a difference in a lot of communities where, like you said, when it comes down to these elections, a lot of times it's about who's got the most money, who's got the most money behind them. And grassroots people can actually compete better in their district than, running citywide. So that's, that's why I think it's huge, and I think it's going to play out and help a lot of people, and maybe we can have better representation in our city governments now than what we've had in the last little bit. And one thing that I heard through this, I heard people complain about, and I want to get this in, is I wished state government would leave the local government alone. We don't want them in our problems, but dealing with us. If we need them, we'll ask them. Leave us alone. Well, 2012 here in 2011, 2012 here in Morristown, we had a mayor that was here, and he wanted to make some changes to our utility board. And 10 years before that, the citizens of Morristown voted in a referendum to let the mayor have the ability to pick those picks. Those people that could serve on those boards. So a gentleman come up to either be renominated or have someone else nominated, and the mayor chose to replace that person. And the powers to be had a fit here in Morristown. And ultimately, this is what they did. They had our state representative carry a bill to Nashville to overturn a city referendum that over 70% of the voters supported, so they could keep that person on the board, the utility board. And it took 21 times before they could get their person back on the board. So for those people that say, I wish the state government would mind their own business, they love the state government when it helps them out. And that's exactly what happened here in Morristown. Needless to say, that state representative was a one-termer.
Well, I think sometimes people forget that the state actually promulgates the cities and gives the cities the power to exist. And if you look at or listen or watch Government Ops Committee, that's all Government Ops does is there's like over 265, I think, boards and organizations that the state controls and has power over. So, that's really under the purview of the state. What also is important to remember, specifically with regard to this bill, is that this bill had statewide applicability. So it any sort of municipality could have fallen under and used those exemptions to run their elections the way that they did. And so that's why this bill, the language of it, had to go back to that general law and make it and just remove those exceptions. So that was what was important. It wasn't that we were trying to overturn one community's city charter or anything. It was really truly a statewide bill. And so that was the importance of it. And so even in the future, some community could have used it if they wanted to, if they so choose to, under those exceptions. So that's why it was so important just to remove those exceptions and put it back to law to ensure that everybody understood that if you qualify for a district, that those people that live in that district, whether it's a small district or whether it's an at-large district, those are the people that vote on you, to ensure that kind of that one man, one vote rule holds true.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like I said, I appreciate you doing it. And that one just dropped out of the sky on me. And I was really surprised that night when you said that. And I was like, all right, this is big. So, and as I said, and I'll leave it up to God works in mysterious ways. And that's the way I believe it, that it happened. And, and that tickles me, So God's like, you do what I want you to do. We'll take care of the rest. So that's good.
Yes, but you were in that you helped. Your testimony helped to get that legislation passed, because it did show that this bill did have statewide applicability. And so I'm very grateful to you for your support.
Thank you. And I was glad to do it. I hope this will give these people in their wards, in their district, their voice back, because they had lost their voice the way these city elections were being run. So I appreciate you for carrying the bill and taking the heat for it, because I know there was some people that took some heat.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. So anyway,
it's there were a lot of different things that kind of surprised me about this session, and that was one of them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on and joining me. I'm glad we were able to finally get this done. I know y'all have had a rough end of the session in Nashville. We won't go into all that, but I appreciate you serving and doing the things that you've done and everything. I'm glad you come on. Do you have anything that you want to finish up with and say to the citizens?
Yeah, I'm very honored and blessed and humbled that I was selected to serve in this position. I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve. Even though, it's been a roller coaster ride, I absolutely enjoy the fact that we have the ability to help people and to move our state forward. I'm excited about our budget. I'm grateful for the investment that we've made in education and in infrastructure and our roads and safety. Those are things that I think are in the purview of government, and that's where we need to really focus our energy on and make sure that we're spending our taxpayer dollars wisely. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to do so. And if you have any questions or if y'all need me at any time, just feel free to reach out to me.
Absolutely. And so with that, I'd say thank you, folks, for joining us and watching this. Share the information. You may not realize that maybe something like this is going on in your city elections, and share that information, and maybe some people can look into it and this fixes it for them. With that, thank you for joining me. God bless you, and we'll catch you on the next podcast. Have a good day. Bye-bye.